Backrooms, the new sci-fi horror film directed by the young Kane Parsons, based off a creepypasta kind of like urban legend internet story.
Or like I like to call them, spooky spaghetti.
Spooky spaghetti or a creepypasta, yes, as you wish. It kind of obviously picked up traction online. People kept like adding to the lore of this story. Kane Parsons picked it up and made these series of short films through an animation software called Blender, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
And all made within computer, and it's this kind of exploring the idea of this liminal space outside of our reality and dimension. And they gained a lot of traction. They got millions of views on YouTube, and then not so long ago A24 picked him up, and he's their youngest ever director, I believe, feature film director. And the film's finally out. We've both seen it now. And so what did you think, Tommy?
Yeah, just before we go into the movie, I find it kind of fascinating and funny that Hollywood is so desperate to capture Gen Zs and Gen Alpha as well. Interest, like these generations are not really moviegoers. They don't really care about the cinema experience. So they just, let's just get one of them to make a movie and hopefully it will work.
Not unless it's got a chicken jockey scene in it.
Exactly. Okay, so Backrooms, I knew about this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. What's your did you have much knowledge of this property or like the world beforehand?
I mean, I think I saw a couple of the videos. I'm not even sure they were the Kane Parsons videos, because I think there's many creators who had a hand in expanding the lore and creating stories within this urban legend creepypasta thing, which I find it really fascinating and interesting. But yeah, I knew about Backrooms, I knew what it was, and when I heard that they were making a movie about it, I was like, yeah, perfect. People saw the potential in this. You just look at the producers list on this movie, and yeah, I mean, the director is Kane Parsons, this young guy. I think he just turned 20, which is really impressive. Congrats to you, man. But I think you got James Wan, you got Sean Levy, you got Osgood Perkins. All these, especially Osgood Perkins recently, have been doing so many incredible horror movies. So it's a joint effort.
Okay, so
they knew that this movie had to.
This kind of touches on, I was going to mention this anyway, but the kind of controversy that is kind of picked up around this movie.
Yeah.
I believe his name is Mark Duplass. He then had to come out publicly because there was a lot of accusations. Look, like kind of like what you've just mentioned. You see all these names of producers who were on set, or potentially on set, were involved in the film, and a lot of there's some speculation came out saying Kane Parsons didn't really direct this film. It's just his name attached because he's so synonymous with the world of the Backrooms.
Yeah.
But then he came out and said, hey, no, this kid, he directed this movie. He was working with the cinematographer, working with the actors, just like any other director would. It was him. This is Kane Parsons directed movie.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of help along the way, and especially after now seeing the film, it does feel like a lot of the sequences, I'd have to look this up, have been probably made in Blender, especially like the handheld camera footage stuff.
You think
like that
so?
looks exactly.
Yeah, it felt.
I mean, it looks exactly like it does from the web series, and he's like a master at that stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if he like constructed a lot of those sequences. I know he made like storyboards for the locations on Blender himself, so he mapped out a lot of this.
I'm sure there's like a blend, if you will, of real and CGI, and but I think most of this looked like real sets.
Oh yeah, the sets look fantastic as well. I just think that in the moments when we're doing the old sort of camcorder footage, I think maybe that's a lot of that stuff might be done in Blender. I could be completely wrong, to be fair.
Even to get the look of it right, you want to replicate the YouTube formula for the big screen. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't see it as a controversy in any way. I feel like he's a young guy, is responsible for the creation of these words. I mean, the word already existed, but he fleshed it out with his shorts, incredibly successful shorts. I was looking at his page, his YouTube page, and he had like 82 million views on one of his videos. So I was like, oh my God, this is insane.
Yeah.
So he's very young, and he did these movies in his bedroom on Blender. So of course he's going to need help in making this into a real movie.
Yeah.
And I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that as, a young filmmaker with talented people helping him out to get this where it needs to be.
I've seen some clips from podcasts, reviews, or people maybe periphery into the industry, and they're really slating him for taking the credit of this film. And it does feel like there's some serious jealousy going on because he's so young, and
that is sad, man.
it's very rare that directors break break out at that kind of age. But it's yeah, I do agree with you. I don't think it's a controversy because on any big budget movie, you have producers coming in and changing things and, you know, managing directors. And off the top of my head, I'm, you know, like Nia DaCosta working on when she went in to start doing the Marvels and her bigger budget movies, she was, you know, handled and had to change things and didn't have full control.
That's way more controversial, you know, like all these Marvel movies where the director is not really the director, but it's just a name attached to a project because they don't really have a say and so much stuff is pre-rendered or done years in advance. They are just there to direct the actors in the 5 scenes they have with real people in it. I think it's perfectly fine for him to be a huge part of this project, but not the sole author at the helm of the film because it's a medium budget movie. I think the budget was $10 million. You're gonna have people there kind of like making sure that this movie is up to par. And also to go into a little bit of the negatives, I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit more, but like you do feel in some of this movie that the director is maybe, you know, out of his depth in a few little things.
Yeah.
I feel like the movie is a bit undercooked and maybe a more experienced director would have done a better job. So, you know, like it's interesting that, you know, you can see the voice of this young director in there, I think.
Yeah. And if anything, a large part of his job is creating the atmosphere of the movie. And the atmosphere is absolutely on point. It's perfect. It's creepy, it's unsettling, it feels gross, and it's just like this weird surrealism aspect to it. So that's all done perfectly. But like you said, I think where this film falters is it's very sort of bare bones when it comes to the characters and sort of plot-wise, I guess. But, you know, and it doesn't need a massively intricate plot here. But the human elements of the film seem very sort of by the by. But, you know, it's elevated by Chiwetel's...
Our friend Chewie. You know, he's our guy.
Our boy Chewie. He's never bad, is he?
He's
great. Never bad in anything. This guy. He's such a professional. I think he really raises the material in this one, and also the Renate
Reinsve.
Yes, Renate Reinsve, who I've seen in a few
She was
things,
in 2 Oscar-nominated movies last year. She was in Sentimental Value.
Yeah. Presumed Innocent she was in as well, Jake Gyllenhaal. Yeah, so she's I think as well she really elevates the material. She's not in it loads, but you know, in the moment she's in.
Yeah, let's just get into the story a little bit. What is the plot, man?
To set us up for people who haven't seen it or, you know, just want to listen to the review, Chiwetel plays the owner of a furniture store and he's very depressed and he's drinking a lot. His wife has left him and he basically one night, you know, he's just drinking, just sitting in the dark furniture store, and he hears this noise downstairs in the basement and starts playing with his switches and realizes that there's this sort of space hidden behind a wall and he could pass through this wall and enter into the back rooms. He begins exploring this area and trying to sort of map it out. And we sort of switch sort of character point of views to the therapist, and she realizes he's been missing for a while, so she goes in to look for him, and then it also enters the back rooms because he mentioned it to her before he went missing. So that's kind of the setup sort of plot, and there's not loads more happens really other than that. To be fair, there's not very sort of many sort of twists and turns this story wise. It's quite straightforward in that sense, but yeah, very simple.
It's great how economical the movie is, and this is part of what also is a bit frustrating about the film by the end. But I felt like it worked to its benefit, especially in the first half. Like the first half is really strong. You start with what basically is one of those YouTube shorts. It's a found footage of this guy is being chased by some entity and it ends with his guy dying. And then we move into the proper story. We have Chewie and the therapist and they have this little role play. This scene is here because they were like, okay, let's find an interesting, unique way for us to relay some backstory of this guy. Let's do it through this therapy character that we want to establish as well. But you know, it's a bit out of character, I think, for him to lose his temper that way. He's acting like she is his ex-wife and complaining and blaming her for his failings, which, you know, we understand is something that really haunts him. You know, what he was supposed to be, what he wanted to be, and what he is just working in this very strange furniture shop that has like this weird name. It's like it's a pirate, but it's also like the Ottoman Empire, which I don't understand. And I think that's also meant to.
Well, because like Ottoman, there's like a style of furniture
Oh,
called
yeah.
Ottoman.
Oh, there you
So
go.
that's I guess the link. But then because I know he's making the video and they're like, "What are you? You supposed to be like an Ottoman Turk, or are you supposed to be like a pirate? Like what is this?" Yeah, it was very bizarre. It was like, and I was gonna say maybe that should have been a bit more straight to
Yeah.
kind of contrast with the weird liminal space of the back rooms. Like it kind of already feels like when you're in that furniture shop, you're in the back rooms already. But I guess because it's a gateway, maybe that's the point.
It feels like it's an amalgam of stuff. You know, like it's both a pirate, but it's also an empire, but it's also, you know, like it's strange. It's like a mixture of things, like the Backrooms are this place, this weird place where a lot of stuff happens for no reason. But yeah, like the opening is really strong, and then when Chiwi finds the Backrooms, that first visit that he does, you know, the slow walk through the empty halls, and it's really cool, that first sequence, because you have Chiwi kind of like walking around. You keep thinking to yourself, you're gonna get lost, man. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
But I feel like the idea of him being an architect, I think he is, in his mind, he knows that he can find his way back.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So I think, you know, like there was a very elegant little thing that they added that made the story a little bit more believable. And then, you know, they introduce the two workers who do the videos. Also, the fact that it's set in the 90s, because if it wasn't, so much of this could not work as well as it does, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, you need that to have that grainy look and feel, and that's kind of the vibe they capture in the web series as well. So
it is quite interesting that for a 20-something guy, you know, like the horror is old camcorder footage, low poly video games, you know, concepts like objects overlapping in a game or like falling through a game map. All these elements kind of like coalesce into what the Backrooms is, right? It's like all these desperate different things that we are familiar with that are a bit creepy, especially when you're a kid and you're playing a video game and you play it wrong and you fall through the map. That stuff was terrifying as a child. That's the kind of horror that this film is tapping into, I think.
Yeah, and I saw some interviews when the film came out with Kane Parsons, and he was talking about some of his influences, and I never played it, but Portal was a big influence on him for the Backrooms, which makes sense because
Severance, I think, is also, you know, like a lot. It was inspired by this idea.
I think that's the other way around, though. I think Severance is inspired by the Backrooms, not this movie.
No. That's what I meant. Yeah, like the idea of Severance is kind of like, at least aesthetically, is inspired by these, you know, there's these winding hallways that don't lead anywhere.
Yeah, the kind of that surrealist corporate look is definitely, and I mean, I don't think the creators of Severance I've not seen them ever mention the Backrooms as being an inspiration, but it definitely is. But yeah, then he also mentioned 1 Hour Photo.
Oh yeah,
really like underrated good thriller, this one. And it has it's got a lot of like these kind of horrible like blank wall spaces, and you can definitely see like the aesthetic influence in this one. And there was, especially when I was watching it, I was getting a lot of like Lynchian influence as well, you know. I think
totally.
There's particularly in that scene that I mentioned that I really liked when we get the confrontation within the back rooms of the therapist and Chiwi. The way the scene is lit, it reminds me exactly of like the sequence in Blue Velvet where the guy is singing In Dreams by Roy Orbison, and we get Dennis Hopper's characters like singing along, and like it's really menacing, and you got these like strange characters who are on the periphery, like just half lit by the natural lighting within the set. Like it very was reminiscent of that, like especially with that dwarf character sitting behind the therapist with like his face half lit. It was very good. And you know, I don't know whether you've ever seen Inland Empire.
Of course.
So you have Laura Dern, she kind of like falls into like a liminal space in that movie as well. So there's definitely, I don't know whether Kane mentioned that being a direct influence, but it's very Lynchian, and I really like that aspect of it.
I mean, I'm not sure it wasn't necessarily an influence on him, but definitely on the production. There's people here that definitely have seen all these movies and they want to capture that kind of aesthetic and energy. And, you know, the liminal space is a very very interesting element to explore in a horror way. I find it so fascinating. And I think our generation in particular, like from the 90s onwards, like this idea of these weird spaces, or like even just like transitional spaces that don't really have a purpose outside of getting you somewhere. Like, like an empty airport to me is like a very strange, not necessarily scary, but like a very weird place
no,
to be.
it's because it's unnatural, because an airport is somewhere that is typically very busy, and to see it not like that, it does feel almost like you're in a dream. I've been in airports sometimes where you missed a flight or whatever, and
you have to sleep there,
sleep on a bench in an airport, and you wake up and nobody's there except from you, and you're like, am I dead? What is this?
Probably.
Yeah, it's a really unsettling concept, and I like it quite a lot.
And I think the original concept of the Backroom was born thanks to a picture that someone took of a place.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen the recent Red Letter Media review of the Backrooms, but apparently they figured out that this place was in Wisconsin, which they are from.
Of course it is.
Of course this really horrible place was shot in Wisconsin. But the interesting thing that I didn't know about is that the original picture of the Backrooms was of a furniture shop, of course an empty furniture shop. And that makes so much sense if you think about it, because a furniture shop has all these walls that are there to kind of like simulate maybe like a room. But if there's no furniture there, then you have no frame of reference as to why that wall is there. And, it becomes really creepy. It becomes unsettling. Why is the wall shaped like that? Why do you have this weird curvature and then nothing behind it? It's like, walking through IKEA, but it's an empty IKEA. There's no stuff there. It's just the wall. That's a really interesting concept to explore, and I think that's why the movie works. It's mostly just a guy walking through empty hallways, but the idea of what might be at the end of that, and like the sounds, the sound design is really good. I think it's
quite like Lovecraftian in that sense. It's more of the fear of the unknown rather than what you're actually seeing. Credit to production design, or whoever, like I said, storyboarded this stuff. I'm sure a lot of it is ripped straight from the web series, but like when you go into certain of these rooms and just like the bizarre, they run into a room and there's just like really low ceiling with like 20 chandeliers.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then they go to the next room and it's like half a swimming pool that then turns into like a grotty bathroom, and you're like, nothing makes sense, and it's just so unsettling.
Yeah, it's literally leftover unfinished rooms from like a very complex video game that you're not supposed to access. You're not supposed to be there, but you end up there anyway because of a bug or something. But in real life,
I remember on the last GTA, or maybe it was Red Dead 2, people had found a way to clip out of the main map, and they could go into this area which you go into during the campaign for a short moment in the game, and people found a way to sort of clip into it, and then when you're there, like there's just kind of like the very base level assets left in there, and it would just be like a still horse that's kind of half done, that's kind of been left there for some reason, and it's got the exact same feel as that.
Yeah, it's like one of those things that like has a very logical explanation, but when you look at it and you have no context for it, it's terrifying. Anyway, we're talking about everything but the movie.
I suppose because we like, other than doing the setup, there's that like we said, there's not a whole lot more to it, but I guess we can go into more like spoilery elements of the film now. I sent you a meme, or not a meme, I guess it was just like a news article that was on Instagram like before this movie came out, and it was somebody's like, they had a look through the IMDb of Backrooms before it come out, and they saw that this that 7-foot like one Eastern European basketball player, the guy who played the alien in Romulus, was in this movie too, and it was like, oh my god, I'm not prepared for this shit, and it's and that got me so excited. I was like, yes, this guy is back. That means we're gonna see him play a practical big creature, or one of the entities that we see, and it wasn't super menacing. I don't know, I liked the design. I thought it was interesting.
It was a bit goofy.
It was a bit
which,
goofy.
Was part of the point, but I think didn't 100% work.
Yeah, for sure. I think the kind of the mannequin type characters we see in that sitting down sequence when they're chatting at the table in the kitchen, they were way more creepy.
Yeah.
But still, it was weird. It's, have him to be like the big pirate version. I guess because he's like this entity is like a evil representation of Chiwi, maybe.
I
'Cause,
mean,
we see he explains that the people down there are like poor recreations of things from reality.
yeah.
And so maybe I was thinking, okay, that's him because he dressed up. He's dresses up as a pirate in real world, and this is like a poor imitation of him. But yeah, it did kind of lose me, or like I was kind of confused a bit when they started going to the explanation of it.
Yeah, okay, so I think the ending overall is a little bit weaker than I would have liked. As you mentioned, the therapy scene is really creepy, really well done, and we also get some explanation on what this place is, an interpretation of Chiwetel Ejiofor's character, of course, but it's an explanation nonetheless. What I didn't necessarily love is the fact that you can eat these guys. Like, why would it be edible? But I really love the design of these different characters and how weird they were and very Lynchian, as you mentioned. And it makes sense. I think anything that has ever been thought of can appear in the Backrooms in some shape or form. And that's why at the end of the film, we see Renata's character, a version of her in the Backrooms as well. And the fact that Chiwi's character is kind of like haunted by this idea of, oh, I wanted to be like a successful, cool architect, and I ended up in this place doing these stupid commercials for like local TV. That's something that haunts him, and that's why the Backrooms representation of that is this evil guy, because that's how he imagines it. Like it's something that destroyed his life, or kind of like represents how his life went wrong. But I feel like it doesn't click with you when you watch it. Like, oh yeah, of course you would have that and maybe that's because you don't want to over-explain the Backrooms, and we'll get to why the ending scene is maybe like even too much explanation. But
yeah, I was worried Chiwi's explaining, oh, these are poor imitations of the things we see on the surface. I was like worried we were getting into like Us level of territory here,
it reminded me of Us.
Yeah, but like and I was like, oh my god, be careful, because that was literally like the grenade pin that destroyed the plot of Us when they when they did that. It's like, oh, everything's just mimics what we do on the surface world. I was like, okay, fuck you, you're gonna break the law here, you're gonna break the law. But no, they just do maybe enough to kind of keep it mysterious.
Yeah,
I feel like they don't over explain in this sequence anyway, but like you said, they kind of then in the final moments of the film, they do go into that more.
Yeah, well, they do thread, like it is dangerous ground, and I feel like maybe I speak as someone who knows about the Backrooms but hasn't delved deep into the lore that probably is there if you want to read, because it's also like everyone can make up anything about the Backrooms. So
Yeah.
which one is the one that you consider to be canon, I guess. But I saw a snippet of an interview with King Parsons, and they were kind of like asking him if he had all the answers, and he was like, oh yeah, of course, everything is mapped out in my head. And I feel like especially because this movie is successful, people know about this. My theater was pretty full. As you mentioned recently, I don't remember which review, but you said, theaters in general are kind of like a desolate.
I was more combat and basically an abandoned warehouse.
Yeah, it's a liminal space. Actually,
Yeah, no, it was.
And apparently in America, at least in the US, Backrooms is beating Mandalorian and Grogu at the box office, which is something that I don't think that's insane. That's insane that a Star Wars movie is, not being seen as much as a new internet sensation. Like this could have been a new Slender Man. That's why I am very impressed by this movie. Like it could have been
100%.
and Five Nights at Freddy's level of just fucking TikTok brain stupid bullshit movie. Instead, it's a very slow-paced, very methodical, very intentional movie, and it's well done, and people know about this. People are going out to see this. I find it interesting because I feel like Hollywood is not really, like, they don't have the pulse. Or like, I mean, they do have the pulse because they made this movie, so they knew that this movie could be successful and could drive people to the cinema.
They're catching up finally.
But it's insane that yeah, like a movie like this is more successful than a Star Wars film, and in a way it's refreshing, it's fun, it's good that
Yeah.
like a low budget grassroots almost project, it's just interesting to see that like people are really responding to this more original, stuff and
Yeah, yeah,
unique
yeah.
stuff.
It
Yeah.
does. I think it really shows like a turning of the tide. Big production companies are going to be looking at this and thinking, "Oh my God, what is the point in spending hundreds of millions on Mando and Grogu anymore? If we can do this." And yeah, hopefully it'll only lead to more like original projects, original stories, people taking chances on, first-time filmmakers and younger filmmakers. So I think it's good news all round. And I haven't seen Mando yet, but I'm sure it sucks.
It does. It really does, man. I mean, it doesn't even suck. It's just mediocre. We'll talk about it. I don't know. It's not the place. I don't want to get depressed.
But I mean, Backrooms crossed over 100 million over its sort of first domestic box office weekend on a $10 million budget. It's crazy, such a success.
And that's why I'm worried, man, because you said, this is a good sign, but also it's a bad sign because the fact that this movie is so successful and the fact that the Backrooms has this deep well of lore, it means that they're gonna milk this dry.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's gonna be a new Saw or Paranormal Activity. They're gonna be a new Backrooms movie every year for the next 10 years. And I feel like
there are lessons to be learned, but the wrong ones will be learned from this, as per. And I'm sure the spin-off Backrooms series on Amazon Prime is already in the works. Let's do a prequel to the therapist character or the cameraman who was in the film for 2 minutes.
No, it's not. It's not even that, man, because I feel like that's the main issue. That's what I was talking about earlier. It's like maybe there is a lot of deep lore about the Backrooms that I am not aware of, but I'm not even that interested in knowing more because, and the movie is not perfect and the characters are a little bit one-dimensional and the conflicts resolution is a bit, I don't know. It's not anticlimactic necessarily because there's a huge chase. It's very, heart-pounding and whatever, but like the way it resolves, it's not the best it could be. But the interesting thing about this movie is that it uses the concept of the Backrooms, at least on paper, to explore character. The Backrooms is a reflection of the two main characters that we follow, and what happens in there is a reflection of their inner struggles in a way. It's not done perfectly, but that's the idea. And I feel like the moment we follow Renata Rainsby out of the Backrooms and into the lab where they're doing all their research and experiments, and she's sat down by the doctor guy and he starts to explain stuff, that's where we enter dangerous territory. That's where we risk ruining the Backrooms. And they do it well. It gives you enough information to kind of like contextualize it a little bit, but it's not much. But like as soon as you do a sequel, you need to expand on that. And I feel like that's diminishing returns, man. That's gonna be that's gonna ruin it if they explore it too much. Or maybe they make it interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, potentially. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing a sequel to this. And I think just off the top of my head, what could be quite an interesting, how you have the transition from Alien to Aliens. It's a genre switch up. So maybe in the Backrooms 2, we focus on some of the researchers and they go in there with maybe a couple like armed soldiers and, they're trying to save somebody or bring someone back out. And it's a bit more action heavy and a bit more, maybe get rid of that slow methodical pace and you change the genre. I don't know, maybe that's something that could mix it up. I'm just picturing that in my head, like an Aliens version of Backrooms. I kind of like the sound of that.
They messed up because they already called this one Backrooms with an S. It should have been Backroom, and then
they fucked it.
James Cameron could have walked into the pitching room and went to the chalkboard and write down Backroom and then add an S, and then the S becomes a dollar sign. Cha-ching. Amazing, incredible. Double Backroom.
Yeah, hey, I'd watch more of this. I think it's an interesting enough world for sure.
Oh, I will definitely watch more of this, and I also checked out some of the shorts on YouTube after the movie, and it's cool. It's interesting. I think it's a bit one note. That's the main problem. I think it risks if you don't bring in a good creative voice or you help King Parsons kind of like develop the story, it risks becoming like more of a parody of itself, almost like, you know, you keep doing the same stuff over
Yeah.
and over again. But it's a good movie. It's an interesting movie, and it's an interesting universe that could be developed in a cool way.
What would you give it out of 10?
It's a good 7 out of 10. It's a solid 7.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm probably maybe like a 6.5. Yeah, maybe on rewatches, maybe it could go up to 7. But yeah, I enjoyed this. I think it was everything I expected it to be, and unfortunately there wasn't any like really good, shocking, unexpected turns or twists. It was a bit straightforward in that sense, but I enjoyed it. I think the atmosphere was captured fantastically, and yeah, like I said, I'd quite like to see more of this.
And we definitely will.
Actually, more like it remembers them. And the more times it remembers something, the less it does.